It was a little after 1 in the morning, dead part of my shift, when the highway usually looked like a black river with headlights sliding through it every few minutes. I was behind the cafe counter pretending to wipe down the same coffee station I'd already cleaned twice. And then this dark gray sedan came off the road too fast, cut across the lot, and stopped crooked by pump 3 like the driver had only decided at the last second not to keep going. For a second, nothing happened. Then the driver door opened, and a woman got out like she was trying very hard to stay in control and was almost losing that fight. She looked late 30s maybe. Nice clothes but wrinkled from being in the car too long. Dark hair pulled back loose like she'd redone it with one hand. She had one hand on the roof of the sedan and the other gripping a big leather bag against her side. She kept looking over her shoulder toward the highway, not casually either. Fast, sharp, like she expected to see somebody coming in right behind her. I pushed through the side door and stepped onto the lot. The air still held heat even that late, dry and dusty, the neon from the cafe sign buzzing over us. "You okay?" I called. She looked at me like she hadn't even realized anyone was there. "I don't know," she said. Her voice was steady in that fake way people use when they're right on the edge. My car started jerking about 10 miles back, and I think somebody was following me. That woke me up more than the cold coffee ever could. I glanced toward the road. Empty. Just the long dark stretch and the glow from our sign. "You see them pull in?" "No." She swallowed and shook her head once. "That's the part one don't like. They were behind me for miles. Then when I took the exit they kept going. Or maybe they didn't. I don't know." She pressed her lips together. "I know how that sounds. It sounds like you had a rough drive." That made her look at me properly for the first time. Like she was checking whether I was making fun of her. I wasn't. After a second she let out a breath and nodded. "My name's Ryder," I said. "Let me take a look. I'm not a mechanic. I work nights at a roadside gas station cafe because I never really figured out what came next after high school, and because night shift lets a guy disappear inside his own life without anybody asking too many questions." But out there, standing by her car while the engine clicked hot under the hood, I wanted to be useful so badly it almost made me embarrassed. She handed me the keys. "Sydney." Her fingers brushed my hand for half a second. Cold even in the heat. I popped the hood and leaned in like I knew something. The engine smelled hot and wrong. I checked the obvious things, wires, caps, anything loose enough for a guy like me to notice. Behind me I could hear the soft scrape of her shoes on the concrete. She hadn't gone inside. Hadn't even moved far. When I glanced back, she was still watching the highway. "You can sit down," I said. "Inside. I mean, I'm fine here." She was not fine. Anybody could see that. But she kept her shoulders straight and chin up like if she relaxed even a little, something bad would catch up to her. I lowered the hood and wiped my hands on my apron. "Think it might be overheating. You should leave it off for a bit." She nodded again. "Okay. Your phone dead?" "Almost. You can charge it inside." That got a tiny smile out of her. Not a real one, more like she appreciated being given simple instructions. "You say that like I'm one bad minute away from falling apart. You came in here like your car was on fire." It felt like it. I opened the door for her, and that was probably the moment this stopped feeling like a normal customer problem. Most people I saw at night were half asleep, irritated, or just passing through. Sydney walked in like the bright lights hurt. She took the chair by the window where she could see both the pumps and the highway, set her bag in her lap instead of on the floor, and wrapped both hands around the paper cup of coffee I gave her even though she barely drank it. I sat on the stool near the register, pretending I just happened to have nothing else to do. "You from around here?" she asked after a minute. "Born in Flagstaff. Ended up here because I make great choices." That almost got a real smile. "So you always work nights?" "Pretty much. And nothing ever happens." "Nothing good," I said. She looked down into her cup. "Sometimes nothing is good." There was enough in that one line to make me stop messing around. Outside, a semi rolled through, fueled up, and left. The whole time Sydney tracked the windows like she expected that pickup she mentioned to appear out of the dark. She never said much more about it, and I didn't push. Still, there were things I noticed. The way she checked the lock on her bag without meaning to. The way she flinched when headlights swept across the glass. The way she answered every question like she was deciding how much was safe to give. After about 20 minutes, I went back out and checked her car again. It started easier that time. The engine still sounded rough, but not as bad. It might make it to the next town, I told her. There's an auto place there that opens early. She stood beside me, close enough that I caught the clean soap smell of her skin under the dust and road heat. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with being sleepy. "Thank you," she said quietly. "No problem." "No," she said, and looked at me straight on. "You were kinder than you had to be." I didn't know what to do with that. Nobody had said anything like that to me in a long time. She got in, then rolled the window down before pulling away. "Ryder." "Yeah?" If she'd asked for directions, money, anything practical, it would have made more sense. Instead, she just studied my face for a second like she wanted to make sure she'd remember it. Then she said, "If I come back through here, I'll stop." And then she was gone, her taillights shrinking back toward the highway, leaving me standing under the neon with my apron on and my hands still smelling like engine heat. I watched the road a lot the rest of that night, more than I needed to, because deep down I already knew one thing for sure. If Sydney came back, there was no way I was going to treat her like just another traveler. After that first night, I told myself I wasn't going to start waiting for her. That lasted maybe 2 shifts. I'd hear tires roll over the edge of the lot and look up too fast. Every dark sedan coming off the highway made my stomach tighten for a second. Most of the time it was nobody. A trucker wanting coffee. A couple arguing quietly by the freezer. Some guy in work boots buying energy drinks at 2 in the morning like his body had forgotten how clocks worked. Then, for nights later, I saw her. Same car. Same careful turn into the lot. Not as wild this time, but still like she never fully trusted a place until she was already in it. I was outside emptying a trash can when she stepped out. The engine stayed running for a few seconds before she shut it off, like she was testing whether the car would behave. When she looked over at me, I got this weird hit in my chest, way too strong for a woman I'd spoken to one time. "Still open?" she asked. "Depends," I said. "You here for coffee or emotional support?" That got a real smile out of her. Small but real. "Maybe both." Inside, I poured her a cup before she asked. She noticed that right away. "You remembered. You were memorable." The words came out before I could smooth them over. I expected her to make it awkward. Instead, she leaned one hip against the counter and looked at me like she was deciding whether to enjoy that. "That sounds practiced," she said. "It really wasn't." "Better," she said, and took the cup from me. She stayed maybe 15 minutes that night. Told me the car had made it to the next town. Got looked at, was good enough for now. Which didn't sound like the kind of answer anybody should trust. She said she'd been driving without much of a plan. I asked where she was headed, and she just looked out the window and said, "West for the moment." For the moment. That was how she talked. Like nothing in her life was allowed to stand still long enough to become a real answer. After that, she started showing up every few nights. Never on a pattern I could count on, but often enough that my body started noticing the hour before my brain did. Midnight to 3 became this window where the whole shift felt different. Sharper. Like the air changed. Sometimes she got gas and left after 5 minutes. Sometimes she sat at the counter and asked me dumb questions that turned into real ones. "What's the most exciting thing that's ever happened here?" "A guy tried to microwave a burrito without taking it out of the wrapper." "That's not exciting. That's sad." "Welcome to my kingdom." Another night she asked why I worked there if I hated it so much. "I don't hate it," I told her. "It's just small." "And you think you're meant for something bigger?" I wiped down the counter and shrugged. "I think I'm meant for something. That's about as far as I got." She watched me for a second with that look she had when she stopped joking. That feeling gets heavier if you leave it sitting too long. I wanted to ask how she knew that. I didn't. The strange thing was how normal it started to feel, her being there under the cafe lights while the highway ran dark outside. She'd sit with one hand around her cup, shoes kicked lightly against the stool, and for those 10 or 20 minutes the station stopped feeling like a place people escaped from. Felt private, like it belonged to us, but there was always that other layer under it. She still parked where she could pull out fast. Still checked the road without meaning to. Still kept that bag close, always close, even when she looked relaxed. A couple times I caught her staring through the glass so hard that I turned too, expecting to see something out there. Once I asked, "You still worried somebody's behind you?" She took too long to answer. "Sometimes I think I'm past that." "And the rest of the time?" She lifted one shoulder. "I keep driving." That should have been enough to tell me not to get attached. Instead, I started learning little things. She liked the cheap hazelnut creamer even though she said it tasted fake. She pushed her sleeves up when she was tired. She had a low laugh that only came out when she forgot herself. She never wore a ring, but there was a pale mark on one finger where one had been for a long time. I noticed that and didn't ask about it either. One night, just after 2, a dust storm started moving across the highway. Nothing huge, but enough to turn the air brown under the lights. Sydney came in with grit on her shoulders and sat down like she was more worn out than usual. "You look done," I said. "I might be," she said. I set a fresh cup in front of her and came around to the customer side of the counter, which I never did for anybody. I sat on the stool beside hers, close enough that our elbows almost touched. She looked at that, then at me. "Aren't you supposed to maintain some kind of professional distance?" "At this place," I said. "Absolutely not." She laughed, then got quiet again. Outside, the lot looked blurred and empty through the dusty glass. "I like it here," she said after a minute. I glanced around at the buzzing lights, the pastry case nobody trusted. The old coffee smell sunk into everything. "That makes one of you." "No," she said softly. "I mean when it's late, when nobody's around." Her eyes shifted to mine. "It feels safe here." Nobody had ever said that about my gas station cafe. Not once. I didn't know what to do with how good that felt. So I said the only true thing I had. "I like when you stop by." She didn't answer right away. Her face changed a little, not closed off exactly, but careful. Like those words mattered more than either of us wanted them to. Then she turned on her stool just enough that our knees touched for half a second. "I know," she said, and that was it. Nothing dramatic. No big speech. Just that one quiet moment with the dust moving outside and the neon humming over us. But after she left, I stood by the window longer than I needed to, watching her taillights disappear again. And this time the truth was harder to dodge. I wasn't just hoping she'd come back. I was already building nights around it. The first time she stayed until sunrise, I knew the whole thing had crossed into something I wasn't going to be able to pretend was casual. It started like any other night with her. Around 1:30, her sedan rolled in slow, almost too slow, and stopped by the side of the cafe instead of a pump. I saw her through the window before she even came inside, both hands still on the wheel, staring straight ahead like she was trying to get herself together before I saw her face. When she came in, she looked tired in a deeper way than usual. Not messy, not falling apart, just worn thin. "You look like you've been driving for 3 days," I said. "Feels longer." I poured her coffee. She didn't touch it right away. Just sat at the counter with her bag on her lap and looked out at the dark lot. "You okay?" I asked. She gave me a small nod that meant no. I came around the counter and took the stool beside her. By then that wasn't a big move anymore. We were past pretending she was just another customer and I was just the guy working nights. After a minute she said, "Can I stay until it gets light?" I looked at her. "You never have to ask me that." Something in her face shifted when I said it. Relief, maybe. Relief mixed with guilt, like she didn't want to need anything from anybody and had ended up needing it anyway. So she stayed. The hours between 2 and 5 always felt strange at the station. Too late for normal people, too early for morning people. The world outside would go quiet in this hollow way, and every set of headlights felt like it meant more than it should. That night felt even stranger because she barely spoke at first. She just sat there, fingers around the paper cup, eyes drifting to the windows every few seconds. At one point I asked, "Do you want me to lock the front door?" You can do that? I'm not really supposed to. But you're considering it. I'm considering a lot of things lately. That got a tired smile from her. You should lock it. So I flipped the sign to closed for an hour and locked up. Nobody was going to care. My boss barely knew what happened out there after midnight anyway. When I came back, she was watching me with that same quiet look she used when she was deciding whether to trust what was happening. That better? I asked. Yeah. She said it softly, the kind of soft that made the whole place feel smaller. We talked more that night than we ever had before. Not in one big dramatic conversation. In pieces. Little openings. Long pauses. The kind of talk that only happens when both people are too tired to keep performing. She asked if I'd ever left Arizona. Not for real, I said. Couple family trips when I was a kid. That's about it. And you never wanted to? Wanted to, sure. Just never did. Why not? I looked around the empty cafe. I guess if you stay still long enough, your reasons start sounding responsible. She stared into her coffee. That's true. I turned toward her a little. What are your reasons? For leaving. I nodded. She was quiet long enough that I thought she wouldn't answer. Then she said, I was married for a long time. Something about the way she said was instead of am told me plenty all by itself. I left a house that never felt like mine, she went on. A town where everybody knew me as one version of myself, and I got tired of being that person. She took a breath. And I stayed too long because once you've built a whole life around keeping the peace, you forget you're allowed to want something else. I didn't interrupt. I just let her say it how she wanted. He didn't take it well, she said. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just flat and tired. I felt my jaw tighten. Sydney. She shook her head right away. Don't ask me for every detail. I wasn't going to. Yes, you were. Maybe I was. But she was right. What mattered wasn't every piece. It was the look on her face while she talked. The way her whole body stayed slightly braced even sitting still beside me. So you've just been driving? I asked. Mostly. He knows where you are? I don't think so. The way she said think made my stomach drop a little. She must have seen it on my face, because she reached over and touched my wrist. Just for a second. But it landed like more than that. Ryder, I didn't come here to drag you into my mess. You didn't drag me anywhere. That's not true. Her hand was still on my wrist. Warm now, not cold like the first night. I turned my arm just enough that our fingers met properly. And for a second neither of us moved. Then she looked down at our hands and let out this shaky breath that sounded like she'd been holding it for weeks. I don't remember who leaned first. Maybe both of us. Maybe it had been happening for a while and just took until then to show up. But suddenly she was close enough that I could feel the heat of her face. And then I kissed her. It wasn't rushed. That's what I remember most. It didn't feel wild or reckless. Felt overdue. Like all those nights of careful distance had finally run out. She kissed me back right away, one hand sliding up to my neck, and I forgot the station, forgot the hour, forgot everything except the fact that this woman who lived like she was always about to leave was here with me, not pulling away. When we finally broke apart, she kept her forehead against mine for a second. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Probably. I mean it. I know. She gave this small breath of a laugh, but her eyes looked wet when she pulled back. Not crying. Just full. Full in a way that made me understand how alone she'd been. The rest of that night changed after that. Softer, but also more dangerous somehow, because now there was no lie left between us. I wasn't just the guy at the counter anymore. And she wasn't just the woman passing through. A little before dawn, she finally told me one more piece. He keeps calling from numbers I don't know, she said. I block one, another pops up. I stopped answering days ago. I looked at her bag. Your phone in there? She nodded. Can I see? She hesitated, then took it out and unlocked it. The screen was almost dead. But there they were. Missed calls from numbers with different area codes. No names. Just a trail that made my chest go cold. Sydney saw my face and took the phone back. That's why I don't stay places long. Before I could answer, Headlights slid across the front windows. We both turned. A dark pickup had pulled off the highway and slowed near the edge of the lot instead of coming straight in. It just sat there for a second facing the cafe. Not parked. Not pumping gas. Just there. Sydney went completely still beside me. That scared me more than the truck did. "You know them?" I asked quietly. "I don't know," she said, and her voice had gone thin. "Maybe. Maybe not. I can't tell from here." The pickup stayed another few seconds, then rolled back toward the road and disappeared. That should have calmed things down. Didn't. Sydney stood up so fast her stool scraped hard against the floor. "I have to go. It's barely light." "I know." "Then wait 10 minutes." "I can't." I got up too. "Sydney." She was already grabbing her bag. All that softness gone. Body tight again, eyes on the windows. That was the moment it really hit me. Whatever had started between us was real, but so was the rest of it. The calls, the road, the fear that could change her face in a second. I had spent most of my life in one place, complaining that nothing ever happened. And now something had happened, and it came with weight I didn't fully understand. She stopped by the door and turned back to me. "I shouldn't have kissed you," she said. I stepped closer. "You wanted to." "Yes," she said, almost angry. "That's the problem." For a second neither of us moved. Then I touched her face, just once, and she closed her eyes like that nearly undid her. When she opened them again, she looked at me with this mix of want and warning that I knew I was going to carry around even when she wasn't there. "Ryder," she said, "you do not know what being near me can cost." And then she walked out into the gray morning, got in her car, and drove away before I could think of anything smart to say. I stood there watching until the road swallowed her up. And for the first time since she'd come into my life, I understood the shape of the choice coming at me. Being with her was not going to fit inside the safe little life I'd been living. She didn't come back the next night, or the one after that. By the third shift, I was making mistakes I never made. Forgetting orders, leaving the coffee too long on the burner, staring at the highway every time headlights passed like I could force her car to appear if I wanted it hard enough. The station felt dead again, but worse than before, because now I knew exactly what was missing. I kept hearing her voice in my head. "You do not know what being near me can cost." The thing was, she was right. I didn't know, but I knew what staying here cost too. I knew what it felt like to be 24 and already moving through my own life like a guy watching it through glass. I knew what it felt like to have one real thing show up in the middle of all that and then act like I was supposed to let it disappear because that would be the sensible choice. On the fourth night, right after 1, her sedan finally pulled in. I knew it was hers before I fully saw it. Something in the way it entered the lot. Careful. Ready to leave again. She parked by the side of the cafe, not a pump. I was already at the door by the time she stepped out. For a second we just looked at each other. She seemed more tired than when I'd last seen her. There were faint shadows under her eyes, and she had that same held-together expression people wear when they've already made a decision they don't like. "I was starting to think you were gone," I said. "I should have been." That landed hard, but I stepped aside and let her in. Inside, the place felt too bright. She didn't sit right away, just stood by the counter with one hand on her bag, looking around like she was trying not to belong there anymore. I poured coffee anyway and set it down for her. "You always say things like that and then still show up." She gave me a tired look. "That's exactly the problem." I leaned against the counter across from her. "Then tell me what's going on." She looked down into the cup, then past me to the windows. The highway outside was dark and empty, same as ever, but the air between us felt tight. "He found the town I stayed in before this one," she said quietly. "Not right away, but he found it." I didn't interrupt. "I left before he got there. At least I think I did." She rubbed her thumb against the side of the cup. "That truck you saw the other morning might have been nothing, or it might not have been. I don't get to assume nothing anymore." My chest went cold. "So leave your car here. Call somebody. Call the police." She gave a small, humorless smile. "And say what?" That my ex keeps calling me and maybe had somebody driving behind me in Arizona? By the time anyone takes that seriously, I'm still the one standing in the same place. Then stay here tonight. Her eyes lifted to mine. Ryder. I mean it. That's not safer. For who? She didn't answer that, which was answer enough. A truck rumbled by out on the highway. She flinched at the sound, then seemed annoyed at herself for doing it. I hated seeing that. Hated that she noticed every noise before I did. Hated that whatever life she'd had before me had trained that into her. She took a breath. I came to tell you goodbye. There it was. Clean. Direct. The kind of sentence that makes the whole room feel smaller. I stared at her for a second. You came all the way back here for goodbye? Yes. Why? Her face changed a little then. Softer. More honest. Because not everything in my life gets to vanish without me looking at it once. That might have been the nicest thing anyone had ever said to me, and it made me almost mad. I laughed once under my breath and looked away. That's rough, Sydney. I know. No, I don't think you do. I looked back at her. You can't keep showing up here, letting me know you, letting me... I stopped myself, then kept going anyway. You can't make me feel all this and then act like the clean version is to drive off alone. She went still. I had never talked to her like that before. Maybe I should have been more careful. Maybe I was done being careful. She set the coffee down untouched. There is no clean version. Then stop pretending there is. For a second I thought she might leave right then. Instead she stepped closer to the counter. You think I want to keep doing this? She asked. Her voice stayed low, but there was heat in it now. You think I enjoy wondering who's behind me every time I stop for gas? You think I like the fact that the only place I felt calm in months is this cafe at 1 in the morning with a man who should have been nothing more than a stranger? That hit me so hard I didn't even move. She looked down, then laughed once at herself, tight and tired. I wasn't supposed to care about you. Well, that worked out great. That pulled the smallest real smile out of her, and it almost made everything worse. She reached across the counter and took my hand. Ryder, listen to me. I came here tonight because if I didn't say goodbye, I would keep thinking about you. And if I keep thinking about you, I will make stupid choices. I closed my fingers around hers. Maybe I'm tired of smart ones. She held my hand tighter. Her eyes had that same look from the morning she left after we kissed. Full and guarded at the same time. I'm heading west before sunrise, she said. I have enough cash to get farther out. New phone by the next state line. New place for a while. Same routine. She swallowed. You need to stay here. I looked around the cafe. The flickering pastry case. The bad tile floor. The old fridge humming in the back. The register where I'd stood through hundreds of nights that all blurred together. My whole life suddenly looked exactly like what it was. Not safe, not stable, not meaningful. Just familiar. Outside, the neon reflected off her windshield in red and blue streaks. When I was a kid, I said, I used to think something would start eventually. My real life, like one day I'd just feel it kick in. I looked back at her. But I think this is it. I think this is the moment. And if I let you drive away, I'm going right back to watching my own life happen from behind a counter. She shook her head right away. Don't say that like I'm some answer. You're not the answer. Good. You're the door. That made her eyes close for 1 second. When she opened them, she looked scared again. But not of me. Of what I was really saying. Ryder, she said quietly. If you come with me, I can't promise you anything. I know. I can't promise this gets easier. I know. I can't even promise I won't wake up in 2 days and tell you this was a mistake. I nodded. Then tell me in 2 days. She stared at me like she was waiting for common sense to show up in my face and save both of us. Didn't. The clock behind the counter clicked over to 2:17. That was the moment. I felt it. Clean and hard. I let go of her hand, walked to the back room, pulled my spare hoodie off the hook, grabbed the envelope where I kept cash and came back out. Her expression changed while she watched me. First confusion, then disbelief, then something deeper that she didn't know how to hide. What are you doing? she asked. I took off my apron and dropped it on the counter. For once, I said. Not staying. She actually looked a little angry. You cannot make a choice like this in 30 seconds. I picked up the keys from beside the register. No, I made it over the last month. I'm just finally saying it out loud. She stood there frozen while I killed the front lights, leaving only the neon and the weak glow over the coffee station. The cafe changed in an instant, from workplace to something already behind me. I wrote a note for my boss on the back of a receipt. Quit. Sorry. That was all he was getting. Was I crazy to walk away from my whole life for a stranger? Would you have stayed or gone? Tell me in the comments. When I turned back, Sydney was still staring at me like I'd stepped outside the version of me she thought she understood. You're serious, she said. Yeah. Her mouth parted, but no words came out. Then she did the one thing I wasn't ready for. She came to me fast, caught my face in both hands, and kissed me like she had been holding that back every second since the last time. Harder than before. Not neat, not cautious. When she pulled away, her forehead stayed against mine and I felt her shaking a little. You are making this very hard, she whispered. Seems fair. She laughed once, shaky and real, and I heard how close she was to losing that control she wore like armor. A pair of headlights passed on the highway. We both looked. Then she drew back and searched my face one last time. Not to stop me now, just to see whether I really meant it. I did. So 5 minutes later I locked the cafe door for the last time, climbed into the passenger seat of her battered sedan, and set my old life down at pump 3 under the neon. She gripped the wheel for a second without moving. You can still get out, she said. I looked at the road ahead of us, black and open and leading anywhere but back. Then I looked at her. Drive. And this time, when she pulled onto the highway, I went with her.